everyone, Gaz Williams here. I am in Ferndale, which is part of Hollywood. Actually, this is like a ravine that leads into and up into Griffith Park, very famous park that overlooks Hollywood. In fact, I think the Hollywood sign is part of Griffith Park. However, I'm waiting for Mr. Tim Exile, who will be joining me for a little ramble. We're going to talk about a whole bunch of things, including the state of play with Endlesss, which is his collaborative app. Hello.
Hello.
Good nam?
Good nam.
Good nam.
Good nam. Good nam.
Good nam. We've done some videos on Sonic State if you want to see. Now that was actually an earlier version of Endlesss.
Yes.
It's come on a bit. The fundamental idea is still the same,
yeah,
in that you get to make some riffs. The riffs go up like cloud-based, I guess.
Yeah.
Ping down to other users.
Yeah.
And it's endless because
it's an endless conversation of music making. So I make a riff goes to you, you add something to it, take something away, or remix a layer, comes back to everyone else can jump in. It's like a chat room for music making.
So I was really super pleased to see in the latest build of it that there is now a chat element. There wasn't before, but now there is almost like a social media interaction conversation going on.
Yeah, well, I mean that's exactly where we want to go with this. I mean, everything, the whole world is now moving away from a small number of professionals who make professional content, which millions of people then consume in this kind of passive way, towards everyone has at least some relationship to things being made, and it's short and it's real time and it's recreational, and it doesn't mean that it's bad. I mean, this is something that I think, especially the world that we kind of come from is very much this sort of professional music makers world, where.
It's all a bit kind of geared around sort of like some pristine finished thing.
But which is a very good thing. But I think when you what can often happen if you kind of propose something that's a bit more quick and recreational, people feel that it may not be of a high quality, and actually that's something that we really want to challenge with Endlesss. The App Store's been around for 12 years now, something like that.
Yeah.
And there's been a lot of make some beats really easily kind of apps that have come and gone. And what's often happened with those apps is that you can't go deep with them.
Yeah.
And that means that even if someone, they are good for people who've never made music before, because they can get results really quickly, but they can't progress beyond that. And I think one of the things that we've been really wanted to do with Endlesss is build something that is quick, it is short, it is recreational, it is real time, it's conversational, it's all the things that make spontaneity and creativity fun.
Great.
The 20th century, all media, we're talking about the moving image, photography, fine art, the written word, music, everything was produced. It was all long-form content produced at great effort by professionals with a huge amount of experience, and there was this kind of professional creative class who create content for the masses to consume, and that's how it was in the 20th century. But this century we've seen a massive move away. We've seen pretty much all media turn into languages, and there's certain key transformations have happened to make that happen. Firstly, we've got connected online technology. Formats are now super short, so we've got platforms like TikTok. When don't fall down this the earthquake cavern. Oh yeah, there we go. Look. This is the beginning of
the San Andreas fault line.
The San Andreas fault. So platforms like TikTok, you make videos that are 15 seconds long, and you can send a video to a friend of you with bunny ears on, and that's a totally valid piece of content, and you wouldn't go to a cinema to watch that, but it means something.
Yeah.
And it means something in the context of that person you're communicating with and your relationship with them and stuff like that. So, basically everything has gone conversational, it's gone recreational, it's gone short form. But what's really interesting, what I find really interesting about it is that the kind of the quality bar has gone down, but we're focusing on something. We've got different values about what that is for. So it doesn't have to be good.
Yeah,
it has to communicate something, and it has to be kind of like pertinent. It has to be relevant. Those ideas are all pretty central to how I think about Endlesss, kind of reframing what music is for and like why we do music. There've been a lot of apps that have made music making very simple, but they can also because you can't progress very far with them.
No,
firstly, like
almost painting by numbers kind of apps in a way, aren't they? You can put a few things here and there, but you can't go much beyond that.
Exactly, yeah. So you get a really good first experience, and you feel like you've got some sense of agency, but then you don't have anywhere to progress. So, and also from the point of view of people in our, we're very much into this whole kind of professional music tech, and I love it. I for 10 years I used to sit behind Pro Tools and spend hours, days, weeks micro editing stuff and tweaking thresholds and attack and release times on compressors and
yes, I'm just going to cut in here. So this is an interesting thing in that we spend an awful lot of time making these micro refinements ultimately on a song that no one's going to listen to, or very few people are going to listen to appreciate all of those micro adjustments. So the amount of time spent sort of doing laborious kind of editing tasks for this perceived commercial realization.
What's happening there is that you're personally getting pulled into real depth. Like, I think one of the most important parts of people learning production techniques to that level is it's just on a personal level, it's just really satisfying. And that sense of mastery and that sense of progress that you're let's say you've been producing and mixing music for 30 years, you still want your production and mixing chops to be improving, and so even just as a personal goal, that can be very rewarding, and all you really need is maybe 10 or so people around you who know you and care about you, to appreciate what you've done. And so that's another thing, like in the new kind of media landscape, it's kind of sort of micro audiences. I mean, it's all super buzzwordy, but I think it's important to kind of like, because we're all trying to orientate ourselves in the way we communicate, the way we create works of art, the way we connect with each other has just changed so drastically over the last 20 years, and we're trying to orientate ourselves. There's Memo.
Hey,
this is
a Memo. We were pretending he wasn't there.
We've lost our bearings in many ways with what's happened. When Facebook and all these social media platforms came along 15 years ago, there was this narrative about the global village, like we're all connected now, and what I think happened is they took very small, very tight-knit communities for kind of groups of friends, like tribes, basically. Classically, with tribes are thought up to about 150 people can exist within a tribe, and the tribe can function. Beyond that, the tribal structures don't really function. And what the first wave of social media platforms did is they took all these tribes, like all the tribes around the world, and they poured everything into this big wide ocean without any kind of intermediary structures. And if you think about how, so obviously we do, there's 7 billion or more of us living on the planet today. So we do have, every single of those 7 billion people has a relationship with every single other one to some extent, but those relationships are brokered through this really kind of complex, almost like hierarchy of structures of different sizes. So you have you've got the individual, and then you've got families,
family structure, yeah.
villages, tribes, towns, parishes, counties, countries, nations, and I think where social media really went wrong is they just went straight from like tribes to
Global.
everything,
Right.
to global, and so we kind of lost our bearings. And well, for me, it started out with a kind of artistic motivations. I was making records, but before I made records, I played the violin. And the violin is an instrument where, you move your body and sound happens, and you stop moving your body and the sound stops, and it's all about doing stuff in the moment.
Yeah.
So I wanted to make electronic music in the moment because that was my first musical experience. That's how I oriented myself. So I built an instrument for improvising, tried to build a career out of improvising, realised that the music industry doesn't really care that much about improv. I mean, there are some exceptions to that, but by and large, it's about writing songs that people recognise and then going around and performing those songs. And that's how the industry is geared up around that. The technology we use to create those pieces of content is all geared around that, and the revenue streams are geared around that, etc. So, I was kind of left with a conundrum. I'd spent, like 5 years of my life building this instrument that was really involved, and I knew that it had much more potential than me, just trying to carve some improvisational career.
Right.
So then started this big long, process of kind of thinking about how I could then turn that into a product.
Can I just jump in there with the flow machine though, because for people who may be not familiar with some of the things that you've done over the past, I guess 20 years, I suppose.
Yeah, I'm old.
But the way that you've liked to perform though is by having like devices that can grab sound in the moment, turn it around, just make instant music. I suppose that's the thing, in that making music in a very instantaneous, spontaneous way.
Yeah,
that sounds like produced music.
Yeah, to an extent. I mean, the thing so that it's interesting you say that, because I think in the room it sounds and feels like it's produced music because there's some extra magic that happens when there's a bunch of people in the room and something is happening now.
Right.
There's some weird extra magic, but you listen back to the 2-track files, and it's like, oh my god, I let that loop roll for like 3 minutes. Right. It's horrible.
Right, because you're so sort of focused on the whole thing, you're not being like dialed into. That's where the refinement and the listening back come in. The kind of editing process.
Yeah, well, slash the doubt. I mean, that's
the doubt.
Because the first pass, it's like when when you're shooting videos as well. Quite often, the first take is the best take. There's some kind of magic there. There's fresh energy.
Yeah.
And then it goes, and you can't really get that back.
No.
The only way you can get that back is by then going through this laborious process of then really dialing it back in, and that's when the huge amount of effort comes. And that leads to that kind of effort leads to immaculate, amazing, incredible sounding music and storytelling.
Oh, so like that produced thing can be beautiful with all that refinement. And,
but it's a very different proposition,
it's
and
a different proposition.
It's about you really, when you create that kind of content, you're sort of tapping into mythos. You're really trying to kind of. It's almost like a process of sort of. It's a weird process of worship in a way. You're kind of like really trying to get to this. Almost like divine truth, when you're trying to produce something. Whereas when you're being instantaneous, it's about the unfolding. It's about it's all about relationships, basically. Because what happens when you converse with people and create with people and bounce things off people, like everyone who's involved in that process kind of becomes something new in that moment, and you leave that, you come out of the other side of that process like changed in some small way through that interaction.
Through the interaction.
Yeah.
And actually as well, I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head there, though, of a very, very important thing, is that music is meant to be a collaborative process, really. Musicians, you can play it solo as a musician, but music is when you're interacting with somebody, it's a form of conversation, isn't it? It's a way. So if you're playing like just the two of you with two guitars or whatever it is, and that little kind of interaction is it you can't be like, see, music production can be, it's all mine, it's mine, ha ha ha, you know.
Yeah.
But I think that's quite interesting, though, this idea of a platform that can distill people's experience. And if you do get quality musicians and maybe experienced musicians, then they can put some of that experience in, but also equally valid for people with no experience as well, because they'll maybe have less of a tainted view on things, and actually that really cheesy simple melody that I might kind of think, oh god, it's too basic, they might not have that same relationship with that notion, and actually because they're not so hung up about it, it's exactly the right thing.
Well, I think because it's more atomic, rather than like molecular. So like tracks being molecules and like Riffs and Endlesss being atoms. There's less you have to master to be able to kind of say your first thing on Endlesss. Whereas if you're making tracks, like today, the only music that cuts through is music that is absolutely top notch, has been mixed and mastered by top notch mixing and mastering engineers. Well, be that they could be bedroom mix and mastering engineers, but they still need to know their shit. And it has to be on Spotify, and you probably need to have be fairly well hooked up with someone who can get you on a playlist and all that kind of stuff. I mean, it's such a high bar to having your music validated.
Is that the way? Do you think that's the way now? Is getting on the right playlist is the way?
I think so. Yeah, I think so.
What would in the past that would have been like getting on the radio. Getting on a really, really
Sorry, well, that's what it was for me. Like, it was getting played on John Peel's show and Maren Hobbs' show, and Fabian Grooveriders' show. That was how. Well, I mean, it's always when you're building a career in anything. I think there's no one single channel that is like the one, unless it's something huge. Unless you suddenly get picked up by some huge global channel. In some context or in some story that just suddenly makes it kick off, but usually it's a multi-channel thing, and they all kind of feed into each other, and you kind of build it up to this critical mass.
In Endlesss, being able to have people who and also being able to make music with people, like friends, but also being able to make music with absolute, strangers, but also mysterious people, as you say, people acting under aliases and whatever.
Yeah.
This is a completely different relationship you have to the music that's being made then, in terms of somebody's contribution isn't couched in sort of whether you like them or not. If like a band member you're kind of not getting on with, maybe you're sharing a house and they haven't done the washing up, their guitar line is going to be kind of you're going to have. I suppose this is an extreme, like kind of semi-extreme example, but by having no idea of who the person is who's creating the music, there means you have a very different relationship to the content.
The relational side to music is, well, for me, it's just massively interesting. I find it more interesting that I guess I've never been the kind of like crate digging librarian type. And I wish I had been, because it just meant that I was a shit DJ, and I wanted to be a good DJ.
And that's when we ran out of time. Big thanks to Tim Exile for inviting me on this wonderful walk to Griffith Park. I hope you enjoyed it. Be sure to check out Endlesss at endless.fm, and also to subscribe to my channel too, because I've got more LA Stories coming. I'm Gaz Williams. Thanks for watching, and catch you soon. Bye.